Hello, I am Father Chris Schaffner, and it is my great privilege today to present to you the next installment in our Stained Glass Window series. Today we're going to take a look at the life of a saint whose influence shaped the church in the Middle Ages and continues to influence our church today. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux is considered a man of many skills and talents. He was an advisor to popes, an effective preacher and defender of the faith, a reformer and healer of divisions, and a wise scripture scholar and theologian. We see in Saint Bernard a man who rose to a position of great influence in a very short time, not without his own share of challenges along the way though, and yet he never aspired to anything more than what God called him to, a life of holiness and of deep faithfulness to God. Saint Bernard was born in the year 1091 to a noble family in Burgundy, France. He was the third of 7 children, 6 of whom were boys. He only had one sister. At an early age, he was sent away to school where his piety and reflective spirit were well noted, particularly his devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. There he began to study theology and scripture. At the age of 20, after the death of his mother, Bernard began rethinking his life. As devout as he was during his youth, he fell to many temptations, particularly lustful thoughts, which plagued him throughout his life. But following his mother's death, he decided to retreat from the world and live a life of solitude and prayer. So he left home to join a monastic Cistercian community. His testimony to the religious life he was living was so inspiring to others that shortly after, his 5 brothers, 2 uncles, and about 30 of his friends also joined the monastery. Bernard became the abbot of the once dying community, which now had become vibrant under his leadership. He went on to found a number of other monasteries, the most famous of which is known as the Abbey of Clairvaux. The beginnings of this new abbey were quite painful for Bernard and others. Bernard was quite demanding, but more so of himself than others. The disciplines he instituted were so strict that Bernard became ill, at which time only his closest friends could convince him to lighten his disciplines. Despite the difficulties, the monastery grew rapidly. Over 130 new monks joined the monastery, one of whom was Bernard's own father. By this time, Bernard's only living family member who was not a religious was his sister, Humbeline. But she too soon asked her husband to become affiliated with a local Benedictine nunnery. While not even yet 30 years old, Bernard was well respected for his advice and insights, so much so that his thoughts on reviving the spirit of monastic orders became the foundation for what would become the regulations of all religious orders. And some monasteries were not happy that Bernard should take such a lead, so they attempted to undermine his efforts by making his rules seem impractical. But Bernard defended his rules and gave reasons for what he put forth. And those who heard him were assured that Bernard's reasoning was sound, and through that he earned the respect of bishops, clergy, and lay people alike. Bernard became a regular advisor of popes and bishops, participating in various councils of the church, but not without controversy. He was made secretary of the Council of Troyes in the year 1128, which addressed some of the issues of the church in France at the time, and drew up the rule of the Knights Templar, which became the ideal for Christian nobility. Throughout the proceedings, Bernard was quick to advise Rome whenever he saw the need, sometimes stepping on some toes, but all with an eye to the good of the church. As a result, though, he was often accused of meddling in matters that didn't concern him, and he received a number of rebukes, even from Rome itself. In the year 1130, a schism or division arose in the church, where 2 different men were elected pope. Different regions had placed their support behind one or the other man, but Bernard intervened and was asked to judge between the rival popes. He decided in favor of the pope known as Innocent II, citing his upstanding reputation, and he convinced all the great powers to recognize him also as the rightful pope. Bernard had what has become recognized as a tense debate with a theologian named Abelard. Abelard had written a treatise about the Holy Trinity that had been declared heretical or false by the church. However, he continued to develop his teachings, which were controversial. Bernard attempted to persuade Abelard to change his teachings, and Abelard agreed to, but he went back on his word. Bernard renounced Abelard directly to the Pope, to which Abelard asked Bernard to a public debate. Bernard could hardly decline after the request was made public. Bernard lobbied people the night before the debate, and when the next day came and Bernard made his opening remarks, which were so powerful, Abelard left without even attempting to answer. In the year 1144, news broke out that Christians had been defeated at the city of Edessa in southeast Turkey, and they had fallen into the hands of the Turks. Jerusalem and other areas were also under the same threat. And so a military operation was planned known as the Second Crusade to defend the Christians, and Bernard was commissioned to preach to the crowds. According to written accounts, he was eloquent and inspiring, speaking about taking up the cross of Christ, repenting of one's sins, and allowing God to deliver the holy places. He was so inspiring, the crowd enlisted in droves, so many so that they ran out of cloth that they used to make flags and crosses. Unfortunately, the Second Crusade was a military and moral failure. While many were inspired by Bernard's words, in the end, they didn't share his values. Bernard felt responsible for the failure of the crusade, which may have contributed to his early death in 1153. In our stained glass window of St. Bernard, you'll find him dressed in what appears to be bishop's garments. You'll note he's wearing the bishop's hat, known as the mitre, and carrying the bishop's staff, known as the crozier. But he was never named a bishop. Each time he refused. He preferred to remain an abbot of his monastery, and abbots will often wear very similar garments to a bishop. It's very easy to confuse the two. You'll find in Bernard's hand a plate holding 3 mitres. This is a common image associated with St. Bernard because they represent the various times that Bernard was offered the office of bishop, but declined each time. So what can we learn from St. Bernard's life? First, we can see in Bernard a man of extraordinary skill and talent. He could have easily attained any rank he aspired to, and yet in choosing to remain exactly where he knew he could make the greatest impact, as an abbot and as an advisor, he teaches us that humility is key. We should never be discouraged when we don't get the recognition or honor we think we deserve, because perhaps God has a plan for us right here, right now, where we are today. He calls us to greatness. We also learn a very valuable lesson about trying to create the perfect life. We do so many things to amass all sorts of skills and talents, surrounding ourselves with the people and things that we think will help us to reach that goal. And certainly Bernard excelled in many areas and was in the company of powerful people, but that didn't guarantee a perfect life. He had some major challenges and disappointments along the way, despite it all. None of us are promised a perfect life. And that's humility I was talking about. We need to be humble in order to accept that truth. And in the face of an imperfect life, we need to turn to faith in Jesus Christ, who's going to help us to find the purpose in our struggles and disappointments that we face. My friends, trust that you are right where you need to be. God has great plans for your life, and if you only strengthen the skills that he's given to you and respond to his invitations to use those gifts, then you're going to see that greatness unfold before you. God's going to use you to make a huge difference in the world. Until next time, God bless.